Hello, my name is Helen Campbell, formerly of DG Skick and now retired. And the subject of my speech now is going to be Barbie, the film, the origins. Before I start, I'll give you a few names. Universal Pictures, Margot Robbie, Ryan Gosling, Ruth Handler, Mattel. And if you've noted all those, I will start now. I don't know if you saw the film Barbie. If so, I'm sure you will have views on it. And if you didn't see it, you certainly will have heard about it. It would have been impossible to miss. Its release was in 2023, which is this year, the time I'm speaking to you. It was much lauded. It was discussed beforehand. And when it finally was released, we read an awful lot about the pros and cons and the degree of seriousness or not in this film. The stars, as I'm sure you know, are big names, Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. There was such a lot of publicity surrounding this film that really it was, for me, difficult to miss. I decided I would have to go and see it. In fact, it took a very long time to have the film made at all, 15 years. It was a lengthy process until Universal Pictures finally acquired the rights to the character Barbie, but also raising lots of questions during that period. Existential questions even. Does Barbie matter? And if Barbie does matter, why? Let's look at the history. The doll Barbie came on the market in 1959. It was a rather controversial doll from the start, and it was launched by one Ruth Handler, a co-founder of the company Mattel in California that produces Barbie. There were many people who were dubious. Will a grown-up doll be successful and appeal to children? Handler was sure that it would be successful, that it would be every little girl's dream, and the incarnation of the woman who had a choice, who could do what she wanted. That was the idea behind the creation. After the launch of Barbie, the doll, at the International Toy Fair in New York, it was a huge success initially. Some 300,000 Barbie dolls were sold in the first year alone. And by 1966, Mattel had taken over 12% of the US market. Barbie became the working girl. Barbie had different uniforms and different clothes. She was an air hostess. She was a businesswoman. She was an astronaut. And in 1973, she was even a surgeon. So, some rather sensible professions behind her. Some say that Barbie is the archetypal feminist. A revolutionary? Well, going back to her start in 1959, she was, arguably, something of a revolutionary figure. She lived alone. She worked for a living. She later had her own house, her dream house, and the idea that her creator, Ruth Handler, had was that girls should have role models like Barbie, women who were independent and not just stay-at-home mothers. And I quote Ruth Handler there. Barbie had a boyfriend, a partner, Ken, but she wasn't defined by that relationship. Mattel, the company, was also brilliant at creating different jobs for Barbie. I've already mentioned some of them. She was also turned into a presidential candidate at one stage, and she has moved with the times, but rather slowly. Some criticized the fact that the first black Barbie was only produced in 1980. On the more negative side, Barbie has also seen to be unrealistic. She might give the wrong idea of how women should be represented to young girls. There were accusations that her perfect body would therefore encourage anorexia in young people, especially girls. And so by 2016, we saw all sorts of new morphologies of Barbie. Smaller versions, taller, and later still, to be more inclusive, also one Barbie in a wheelchair, and one with a prosthetic leg, and yet another with the condition vitiligo. Many people said that children playing with such dolls would have a more realistic picture and better understanding and empathize more with those who had those conditions. Now, a further example of the more serious issues that were raised by the film is the character of the male figure, Ken. The male figure here is always in the back seat, so to speak. Ken always takes second place to Barbie, until he and Barbie reach the real world, where they find that it is ruled by the patriarchy, unknown previously to Ken, and something he finds very exciting. The bosses, those that are shown as the bosses of Mattel, the company behind Barbie, are also depicted as very limited, rather stupid in fact, and all of them men. I have to say, I thought that the film was rather more serious in its message than I had expected. The audience around me were all much, much younger than me, and all seemed to think that it was a quite serious film too. There wasn't that much laughter, but there were lots of nods. All the seats, by the way, in the cinema were sold out for all performances during the first few days. And after the end of the first week, I was lucky to find one seat for one showing. So one thing is for sure, Barbie has been a huge box office success. It's surely a financial success now. Over $1 billion have been sold since 1959, and the film has made an absolute fortune. In fact, it has already earned $1.38 billion, the highest grossing film in Warner Brothers' 100-year history. We remember that Warner Brothers merged with Universal. So it has altogether been a big moneymaker for everyone. Well, I'm not sure whether this should be seen as one of the great films of all time. In fact, probably not. But for me, it was an interesting experience, and I've read some really most fascinating articles about Barbie since. By the way, I should also mention, on the feminist role side of the picture, that it's also the highest grossing film ever made by a female director. And I think that speaks for itself. Thank you.